G'day from me, John Denton, and welcome to another podcast in the Business Ready for Sale series. This episode is a recording from a webinar that I did with Charlie Stevens of Domain Digital on the topic of cybersecurity safety tips for businesses. Now, you might be asking yourself, well, what's cybersecurity got to do with getting businesses ready for sale? Well, if you're getting your business ready for sale and making it so that you could keep it forever or sell it tomorrow, one of my little maxims, then the last thing you want is for your computer systems, your IT, to be hacked. And especially you wouldn't want that to happen if you had gone through the process of getting a buyer for your business and you're into due diligence and working your way through to settlement, and then you get ransomware or your system gets hacked, and now you've not only lost your systems and possibly your business, but you've lost the sale. Here in Australia, we've seemed to have had a spate lately of quite serious and major cyber attacks. Optus, Telstra, Medibank, big organisations with, you would think, pretty secure systems. So a lot of small and medium business owners think, oh, well, I'm too small, nobody would be interested in me, and why would anybody want to hack my systems? Well, let me tell you, I can think of examples before we get on to Charlie, where businesses have been hacked. One situation, a lady put her business financials to her tax agent. The tax agent submitted them to the tax office, only to be told that, no, you've already submitted your return and we've given you a refund. Because what had happened is somebody had stolen her identity and her business details, submitted a tax return on their behalf, and got a refund. And now the tax office is saying, well, you've got to prove who you are. But not only that, bank accounts, credit cards were compromised as well. And it was an incredibly long and difficult job, you can imagine, to re-establish everything. In another case, I know of a business that was quite a large business doing $15-20 million turnover. They were in the middle of putting together a tender for millions of dollars worth of business, and their system got hacked with ransomware. They were locked out of their systems. Now, not only could they not pay wages at the end of the week or do anything, they couldn't complete the tender. Cost them a lot of money. It took them weeks to get back on the air, and they had to pay a fortune in Bitcoin. As a business owner, it's your responsibility to ensure that the data moving around within your organization is protected against cybersecurity breaches. This responsibility exists not only for your benefit, but also for the protection of sensitive information of your customers and clients. When your business becomes a victim of a cybersecurity attack, it not only puts personal information at risk, but also disrupts your business until it's resolved and can cost you a lot of money or put you out of business. Let's hear from Charlie from Domain Digital, who's going to give us lots of tips and things that we can do to minimize the risk of us getting a cyber attack. G'day, Charlie.
G'day, John. Thank you, and thanks for everyone for joining today.
Yeah, looking forward to this. Charlie presented to my Business Owners Taking Action, my in-person group here in Perth recently, and got a lot of questions. We spent quite a lot of time going through questions. So, Charlie, give us a little bit of an intro about yourself and your business, and then we'll get into your presentation.
Awesome, thanks. So my business is Domain Digital. We're a managed service provider, and basically we wrap small, medium business with services ranging from infrastructure through process through to a cybersecurity framework to ensure that people are secure and reliable moving forward. Today's discussions basically take you through a small part of the threat landscape. There are so many different ways, but I really like to give people a little bit of the how, and based around that, you've got a bit of an insight into that. Then we'll go into what it actually means and how you can start to protect yourself. So we'll go very much from the very, very simple and stuff that any and everyone should be doing, through to the slightly more complex if you're a larger organisation. Alrighty, starting out, we've got some quick facts and figures for you. This just gives you a little bit of the scope of where things are at. This is from IC3 out of the US. Very much US based, although there's a lot of input from other countries around the world. I've been following this for quite a few years now, and it never ceases to amaze me how these numbers are going up. If we take a look at last year, for example, we've got last year this was sitting at $4.2 billion through to I'm going to say last year, that's the 2020. So the 2021 numbers have wrapped up at $6.9 billion in victim losses. So it's a fairly substantial increase over the past 12 months. A large portion of this sits around business email compromise. That is coming up at nearly $2.4 billion. And, because it's such an easy way for threat actors to get into an organisation, that is, of course, where they like to focus their attention. Now, when we're looking at attacks, there's a substantial number of different ways of going about stuff. But if we want to drop it into there's targeted attacks, and then there's the, if we throw enough mud at something, if we look at that in a universal medium, that equates to email. So literally, it's so easy to send billions of emails, and then you can, people will either click on something for a payload, or they'll be phished, and we'll go into that in a short while. When you're looking at targeted attacks, there's really 5 key areas. Finance, healthcare, construction, legal, and manufacturing. Each of them, ultimately, threat actors are after cash. So finance, that's obvious. There's lots of money there. From a healthcare perspective, there's large quantities of personally identifiable information. So all your date of births, your Medicare numbers, all that sort of good stuff is all on file. So it's very lucrative for threat actors to get access to that information. From a construction perspective, they're generally quite large projects. So and this is where ransomware comes in. So if you've got large projects, lots of money on the line, and magically everything's ransomware, so someone has no access to that anymore, then the entity is much more likely to want to pay to get their information back. Legal, intellectual property, and again, potentially large transactional values that are going through there. And from a manufacturing perspective, it's intellectual property. So if you can get hold of that, then it can be on sold, sometimes at fairly significant amounts of money. So we spoke about targeted versus, let's throw some mud at the wall, and email is very much where it's at. And what they're looking for here is to grab your information, and they do this via phishing. So that's you're opening an email with a payload attached. This is actually becoming less common now because everyone's had drilled into them. You must have antivirus, you must have anti-malware, even out of the box type setups. So your Windows native environment has quite a good antivirus that sits in there. It's becoming less. It's not non-existent, but it's certainly the payload side of things is becoming less from a direct access. there's a lot of phishing that sits around opening an email and it says, okay, you need to authenticate your account. So people go off, they type in their username and password, and then that information is channeled straight into the hands of the threat actors, who will either use it for their own use, or they'll, if they can collate enough of it, it'll get pushed out for sale at the dark web, and another threat actor will have a crack at the numerous accounts from there. You can also be infected just by visiting a website, and this is especially the case if your systems haven't been patched or had the security updates applied properly. We talked briefly about the phishing side of things for the capture of login details. We'll go through in a little while multi-factor authentication. If you give someone your username and password, that's obviously not a good thing. But if you've got a second factor of authentication that's required on top of that, and they don't have access to that, then effectively those username and password details are of no use to that threat actor. Payloads that get released can sit in systems for a very long time, and there's numerous things that occur in these situations. Basically, the payloads can sit there and they can start to move sideways through an organisation. That situation is, once you're behind a firewall, you can start to get into other systems. So multiple levels of detection are actually needed within today's network to make sure that you continue to be protected. Social engineering is another one, and there's lots of things on social networks that will capture your private information. Well, not so private as it may be. Things like what's your dog's name, what's your mother's maiden name, what was the first street that you lived on, what kind of car did you first drive, and all this information is corresponds to the kind of details that a bank, for example, will request to verify that that if you're trying to retrieve some information. Now, if you're dropping like a little bit of information here and there, you don't feel that it's a big thing. But the point is that the systems are collating all of that detail, and it's building a picture about you. So literally, the threat actors are trying to understand who you are, what you do, where you live, what your date of birth is, and all that other information. Once they got enough detail there, then they can call your bank or call your phone company, for example, and start to make changes from there. Mobile devices, they also you can actually get malware downloaded onto your mobile devices. So there are malicious infections that come from both the Play and the App stores, which are, that's obviously not a good thing. And one of the huge issues is unpatched or misconfigured devices. So essentially, if when a patch is released or a security patch is released, your best thing to do is to get that applied to your device as quickly as possible. So whether that is your PC or your phone, the quicker you can get the latest updates applied to it, the less chance you're going to have of a threat actor exploiting that particular environment. Things have changed considerably in the security world. I mean, it's pretty much gone from not if but when, and rather than looking at a pure protection type setup, which is the case, a number of years ago, we'd look to set up a a secure perimeter to make sure that no one got in, and we just hope that no one got in. Now we're basically assuming a breach, and when we look at assumed breach, we have to have eyes inside the network to understand what is actually going on. So the pure let's protect an environment is an outdated strategy. You need to be able to identify threats, protect, detect, respond to them, and then recover as well. And the thing is, this is continual improvement. It's not a set and forget. You can certainly put some effort in from a security perspective and improve your profile. In other words, reduce the threat vectors that sit around the outside. But it's never going to be a set and forget kind of scenario. And this is where it's got to be driven from the top. Like, executive management needs to purposefully enact change. It's always got to be, we need to protect the business. We need to protect the assets within it, and have that continual focus in order to ensure that it is being tweaked over time. The other thing that we're so the systematic process-driven approach. So you can have, really good products, you can have really good people, but you've got to have exceptionally good process as well to make sure that everything is configured and continues to be configured properly in your environment. Other thing that we're seeing is cyber insurance policies are starting to be denied based on what is effectively executive negligence. So failure to roll out basic security hygiene, and in those situations, if really simple things haven't been done, then the insurance companies will go, okay, we're going to deny this claim. It's like getting your house robbed and you've left all the lights on and the front door open. There's kind of questions asked if someone walks in and pulls something out from there. So what do you get to do as a business? What are some of the steps that you can take? One of the most powerful things is multi-factor authentication on any and everything. So I think, John, we've got a poll set up here to find out who's using multi-factor authentication. Does everyone understand what it is, who's using it and who's not? So if we run that poll quickly.
We've got 100% saying no. not using multi-factor authentication. So that says something.
It does. Two things here. If you look at, we spoke earlier about if someone gets phished and either, they accidentally give away their username and password, then if you've got multi-factor authentication on, the threat actors put in the username, they put in the password, and then when they're challenged for that second factor of authentication, if they don't have it, they're not able to get access to your environment. And the added bonus with that, of course, is if you've got push multi-factor set up, then you'll get a buzz on your phone that says, do you allow this application access? And obviously the answer is no, because it wasn't you. So you can see that someone's actually hacked your account. And then you can go ahead and actually change your password from there. We've got a little E8 on the end here. So E8 stands, that's part of the Australian Signals Directorate Essential 8, which is a 8 key controls that the Australian government has suggested every organisation should put in place in order to be able to keep them at the minimum protection levels. So next items that's really simple for small business to do is to apply the latest patches to everything. So this is your phones, your computers, servers, firewall switches, everything. And again, this is part of the E8. Because when a software developer writes their code, they don't necessarily know that there's a vulnerability in it. So it goes out into the big bad world. Someone will figure out that there's a hole in there somewhere along the line. So then they write a patch, and that patch is released as a security update for you. And they need to be applied as quickly as reasonably possible. Another simple thing is to restrict or limit administrative privileges to your local machines. And even as what I hear from feedback from a lot of business owners, I'm the business owner. I should have administrative access to my local machine to do as I please. There's an argument for and against that, which is fine. But if you are looking for local administrative access, it should actually be a separate account. So if you need to do something to your local machine, you log out of your standard user, you log in as the admin, do what you need to do, and then go back in as the user. And the reason this is important is because any user should have the minimum level of privileges in order to be able to do their job. So if you've got an elevated level of privileges on your device and something gets into your machine, it makes it easier for them to get to places that they shouldn't actually be getting to. So this is a really simple discipline to work through. Back up everything, back up. And more than this, because everyone thinks they've got a backup. When was the last time you actually checked that the backup was working? The last time you want to discover that your backup's not working properly is if you're in a hostile situation, you need to recover, you load the backups and they're not actually working. So you need to be checking those on a regular basis to ensure that it is in fact working. And the software is just not saying that it is working.
The thing with backups as well is, Charlie, there's backups and backups. I've seen people do backups and keep the backup, in the same. The first thing is you're better to disconnect the backup and take it away, take it off site. Things can get destroyed. If you have a fire and the office burns down, if everything's stored, you know what I mean?
Oh, unquestionably. So, you should have a minimum of 3 backups, and one of them should be off-site and completely disconnected as well. So, realistically, you can never have too many, but regardless of how many actual backups you have, you also need to make sure that they are working as well. Another one that we see quite often is you need to deploy and maintain banking and accounting policies. So this is incredibly important, because if a threat actor gets into an organization's email, they'll actually start to build out a storyboard. So they'll know who the CEO, the CFO, the general manager, and they can actually go through the account side of things and see where the invoices are going. Puts them in a really good place to be able to trick people into doing things that they shouldn't actually be doing. And this includes if an invoice is sent out to clients, like it might be a valid invoice for a valid project that's been done, but the bank account details have been changed. So if the bank account details are ever changed, then there should be a process to firstly call the organisation that sent the invoice in the first place, and you never call the number that's actually on the invoice that's been sent to you, because that could have been redirected as well. You need to independently verify the phone number and give them a buzz and make sure that the information is actually correct. And the other thing that you can do, which is not actually done by default in either Xero or MYOB, as far as I'm aware, is that there should be an alert set up as soon as a bank account has been changed. And what this will do is, if someone goes in and changes the bank account, and then there's an alert that goes out to multiple other people, there should be questions asked. Why was this bank account changed? Did you independently, call and verify that the new bank account details are correct? And in that way, you can capture, or you can hope to capture, if there has been a threat actor trying to inject new bank account details. So there was something I was just discussing with John earlier. Rob Heathcote, who's a famous horse trainer, lost almost 100K to scammers posing as Mercedes-Benz. So he thought he was interacting with Mercedes, organising a new car, and got an invoice sent through. He paid the invoice, and that was all fine, except for that money went into the threat actors' bank accounts instead of Mercedes. So that's going to be an interesting case to see how that rolls through. Again, so all of these things are pretty easy to do, and they just help you to reduce improve your security posture a little bit. You can also use a password manager. So again, John, you were looking at doing a poll on this. Let's get a bit of a pulse on how many people actually have password managers.
Yep. Yes, no. What's a password manager?
It's all good. So let's roll just quickly through some of the things that a password manager will do for you. So as a discipline, you should never use a password more than once. And the reason for that is if a website ever gets compromised and your password information gets sucked out of it, if they have your username, which is normally your email address, and then they have a password that's been used in multiple sites, obviously they can start to log into those multiple other sites and get access to your information. So never ever use a password more than once.
Yeah, we ended up with 50% said no, 25% said what's a password manager, and 25% just said yes for everything. So it's a real mix.
Bit of a mix there. All right. Well, hopefully we might have convinced you to at least consider using a password manager down the track. Just a quick one on this. A lot of people feel that using a password manager is going to be a bit of an impost into their lives. But once you get used to it, it makes your life so much easier. Makes it easier to create passwords. The passwords are automatically injected into the websites on the way through. It's actually quicker and it's far more secure. So it really is worth your time to investigate and use a password manager.
Are you going to recommend any password managers later on, or?
Oh, well, LastPass is always a good bet. They've got some very good reports that can come out of that. So they will tell you whether you've used a password more than once. They will tell you whether your passwords are weak, weak, medium, or strong. So if they're using minimum complexity with upper lowercase numbers and symbols, you should also be using passwords of a minimum length. So if you're using a password if you're using a automated password generator with a password manager, why wouldn't you use a longer password? It's simple and very easy to do. And the other thing they'll do is actually go through and scan the dark web for compromised passwords. So we spoke before about business email compromise. If your details have been scraped and then put on to the dark web for sale by a threat actor, then that will actually get picked up and you'll be notified. So then you have the opportunity to actually change your passwords at that stage. Now, hopefully, you're running multi-factor authentication on anything or any and everything, so that will reduce the the threat a bit. But if someone else knows your password, it's obviously a good time to change it at that stage. So they were the really simple things to roll through.
Just while you're talking about passwords, Charlie, it still amazes me that banks, Westpac, you can only use letters and numbers, and it's got to be 6 letters and numbers. That's not very secure, So why are the banks so far behind on this stuff?
They're running very, very old systems that basically they're not able to cater for special characters. So special characters or long password lengths. So that's the reason why the authentication through the bank systems are of such simple passwords. They do have substantial amounts of additional security that sits on top to monitor for abnormal activity. I mean, it's in their best interest to ensure that people threat actors don't get access to your money, which will end up ultimately being the bank's money if it disappears. So it is a source of frustration, but you can rest assured that they certainly do have significant layers of additional security to keep your money safe.
That's reassuring. Thank you.
What else can we do? Security awareness training. So we're looking at the stats. So business email compromise is a significant area of loss when you look at the total pie, and that comes through people, because people are potentially clicking on things that they shouldn't, potentially putting information into spots that they shouldn't. So running security awareness training programs can help educate your staff on improving their security posture. Security awareness training has improved significantly over the years. We first started out by going, well, everyone needs to go through security awareness training, and the point here was, everyone thinks they're an expert, so why would they want to do security awareness training? So instead of doing formalized programs like you have to sit through all these PowerPoint presentations, we have the scenario where an organization is phished. So fake emails are pushed into the organization, and for the people who click on those particular emails, they get taken to a page that says, lucky this time, this was a test. It's not it's not a threat actor trying to grab your details, but we will channel you into an education program to try and help you identify how to spot a fake or a phish email in the future. Application whitelisting. So application whitelisting is a little bit like a bouncer at the front door of a nightclub. If your name's not on the list, you're simply not allowed in. And in the same way, if a program is not on the list of approved programs, it just won't be allowed to run on your system. So in that situation, you've got application whitelisting applied to your environment. A payload comes in via email, someone clicks on the wrong thing, for whatever reason it gets through all your antivirus and all that sort of good stuff, and then it goes to run, and the application whitelisting is going, no, you can't run. Simple as that. So this is extraordinarily powerful. Now, up until relatively recently, I suppose, application whitelisting was incredibly difficult to administer. But the latest iterations of this technology have significantly improved the administrative burden of applying this, and it really does make sense to drop it onto your environment. Segmentation of your network. So the thing is that we spoke previously about having your backup in a different place to your servers, and you may or may not be using servers, but which is in a different place from your workstations and laptops. And then you should be splitting those out from your voice over IP applications and printers and smart TVs, etc. And the reason we don't do this, the reason we want to have a segmented network is if there's a threat that gets into one part of your network, you don't want it to be able to move into another part of your network. So the more segmented it can be, the better it is. So this is a little bit akin to to having multiple locked doors within an environment. So you might get through the first door, but if you don't have the key to the next door, then you can't get into the next room.
Talking of the home, I was just thinking of the Internet of Everything. Now you've got refrigerators that connected to the internet, and Google Home and various Amazon and Apple devices and things all connected to the internet. I mean, even at home, you're really giving up a lot of privacy potentially, aren't you, through these things?
100%. There's no question of that. So privacy is one thing, but it's also you've got the security issues, because once a threat is inside of your network, then it makes it much easier to transverse its way around. We've got configuration of Office macro settings. So if you're using the Microsoft Office tool set, hardening or making sure that that's all tuned up, and in fact any of your applications, so operating systems and applications, when they're installed by default, they're installed for maximum usability, not necessarily maximum security. So as an organization, you need to figure out how far you want to take your how far you want to take the security risk, and then apply the application hardening in line with the risk that it is to the organization. We've got much upgraded antivirus and anti-malware platforms. So these are endpoint detection and response platforms. So these are usually fed through artificial intelligence. So not only are they looking at the standard signatures to say, that definitely is a virus or that definitely is a piece of malware. There might be a 0-day threat, something that no one has ever seen before, and it starts doing some odd behaviors. At that stage, the information's fed through to AI. It picks it up and goes, all right, this is not right. I'm going to have to get a security operations center analyst onto this. And so you have a real person actually looking at your system in real time, and then they'll make a decision as to whether it is indeed a threat. And if it is, what happens from there. So that's so the EDR is a prevention tool. And then you've got the security information and event management platform. So this is detection tool set, and it's effectively CCTV inside your network. So it's not going to prevent something from happening, but what it does do is if a threat actually does get in, it can see literally everything that threat has touched, every registry key, every application that it's gone through, and in that way you can wind it back much easier. Mobile device management. So this allows you to do a whole bunch of things, including making sure that the mobile devices are up to date. You can do geo tracking. You can do remote wiping of the devices. So if a device is lost, you can go, right, okay, we can't see it. but we're going to make sure, or it gets stolen, we're going to wipe all the sensitive information off it.
Are mobiles a real threat? Because, people keep their credit cards and all this stuff in their phones these days.
Absolutely, and you've still got access to SharePoint in a corporate environment. You've still got access to OneDrive, and there's a whole bunch of sensitive, corporate information that you've got access to via your mobile. So it is, yes, we've been calling a mobile a mobile, like it's different from a computing device, but it's exactly what it is. It's quite a powerful computing device that you just happen to hold in your hand. And another thing that you can consider doing is upgrading to Microsoft 365 Business Premium, and out of that you'll get access to what they call the security score. So it basically says, this is your security score versus other people in your industry, so you can see whether you're below average or good. And there's also a whole bunch of recommendations that sit in there that you can apply organizational wide to reduce the threat vectors to your organization. And we're wrapping up to the top of the hour, so I'll roll through quickly. But any solution is going to require people, process, and technology. And people, there's lots of good people out there, and you just need to be able to write a check around technology. You can buy that, but what is incredibly important is process, and this is something that a lot of organizations are missing, is the process to ensure that your people are correctly configuring the technology to give you the best result that you can get. So it really is, you need 3 out of 3 of those environments, of those people, process, and technology in order to keep your environment safe. Pretty much the next step from there is to look at certifications. So the essential 8 that we were discussing previously from the Australian Signals Directorate. It's not a certification, but it is a basic framework, and it's it's a good place to start. You've got ISO 27001, which is the security framework, NIST out of the US, and something I wanted to cover off is there's increasing pressure from larger organisations, including government, to close out their third-party supply chain risk. So what do I mean by this? A large organisation have spent a whole bunch of time and money on their security, and they go, yep, that's great. And then in order for them to supply what they need to supply, they'll have a whole bunch of smaller organisations which may not have, or highly unlikely to have, the same level of security posture. So if they're targeted, then they ultimately end up getting access to the larger organisation, and this is especially prevalent in defence. So if you're a defence contractor, as a third-party supplier, then you really need to be stepping up your security in order to continue dealing with them. But we're seeing this across the board. Do we have any questions that we want to go through, or is there anything that's been wrapped up just before we close out here, John?
One question: VPNs, virtual private networks. That question comes up quite a bit. Should I be installing a VPN for my business or even at home? What's your view on that, Charlie?
It depends on the environment. So VPNs are becoming a largely legacy style of technology, because it basically means that you've probably got some servers or some sort of on-premise technology and you need to be able to create a secure tunnel back into that network in order to be able to get access to that information. If that is your, if you do have some legacy equipment, then yeah, VPN works extremely well and should be used. But there's a whole plethora of new styles of technology that will allow you access to all of your data in an encrypted format, without having to create or maintain a VPN. So things like SharePoint, for example. Does that answer your question for you?
Yes, I think so. That's the other thing that comes up a lot is that now that a lot more people are working from home, and this is probably applies to bigger businesses, but now is there a danger that people's security at home, their systems or whatever they're using at home to connect to the corporate systems are a threat?
Unquestionably, yeah. Unquestionably. I mean, when everyone is sitting at work, they're behind a good high quality firewall, and there's a whole bunch of protection that sits in and around that. When you're working out of that environment, then the security can certainly be compromised. If you're connecting to an unverified Wi-Fi, for example, or even working from home, the technology that you're using at home is not a scratch on what is used in a corporate setting. So there's a significantly higher risk there without question. There's ways to mitigate against that, and that's on a case by case basis. But it is definitely adding cost and complexity to organisations to have people working out of the office.
It's up to the corporates to sort that one out.
Yeah, well, when I say corporates, I'm talking anyone with staff.
Yeah, anyone with staff who work from home.
Yes.
Whatever the size of the business. Yeah, that's true. They need to be aware of that. What about the antivirus and these type systems? I use Trend Titanium, I think it is, or something,
yep.
And I've, touch wood, never had a problem. I shouldn't be saying that, maybe.
There's always good, better, best type scenario. So we talk about basic AV platforms, and then we talk about the EDR, or the endpoint detection and response, which plugs, what is effectively an antivirus, anti-malware in with artificial intelligence, and then you connect it into a real-time security operations center as well. Everything comes back to what's your risk profile, what are you trying to protect, how much money should you spend in order to ensure that you remain secure. And this is a tailored response. We all face the same sort of threat. So if we're talking about as soon as you connect to the internet, there's threat actors that are trying to get into your environment. So are you trying to protect billions of dollars from a financial institution's perspective, or are you running your local florist shop? That there's not quite the same risk there.
Okay, we've had a couple of questions now from Paul. One is, how do I access the dark web? I would suggest you probably don't.
You can get reporting from the dark web. It depends on why you want to access it. It's not something that you stumble across. Like you need specialist software in order to be able to get access to the dark web, and then you get to expose yourself to all the good stuff that comes along with that. But if you're trying to understand your information on the dark web, then there's numerous platforms that will do that reporting for you. One of which, LastPass, they've got dark web reporting actually baked into the platform, so they can see whether your information, your private information, is up for sale on the dark web.
Seen some interesting reports you've done for us in the past. There's a question here from Keith. Should you unlink your computer when not using it?
Good question. I think you'd be better off putting the appropriate levels of protection onto your machine. Can it be compromised if it's not connected? No, but it also can't be updated if it's not connected as well. So if you disconnect your computer, great. There's no threats that can physically get access to it. But then you've got the scenario where there might have been some patches pushed down onto that machine. So when you do need to connect it back up, it doesn't have access to those patches, so it makes you more vulnerable. So that's keeping your machine patched, making sure that you've got the the appropriate levels of anti-malware, virus protection, etc. Is probably more important than disconnecting.
It's an interesting one. I'm a bit paranoid about things, and I sign out of absolutely everything. I never close the browser tab without signing out if I've been logged into something, whatever it is. And then when I'm finished with the computer, I sign out of Microsoft because I'm on a Surface Pro and stuff, and shut it down. That's just me. But when I did some work in defence when I lived in Canberra, I remember a defence guy there saying the only safe security thing was an air gap, when something's not connected.
Yes.
So, but it just depends, like you said, on where you're at. There, Paul also asked a question about what is a payload?
A payload is an unwanted piece of software that is transferred onto your device. It could be an application that is, trying to steal the keystrokes off your computer. It might be a piece of ransomware that's looking to drop some encryption software onto your machine. It could be a bug that's looking for other vulnerabilities in your network to start moving sideways and getting access to other parts of your environment. But essentially, a payload is a program that is designed for undesirable or nefarious purposes.
And how do we get a payload? I mean, you did cover this early on, but how do I get a payload down onto my computer? I don't want one, but how does it happen?
Well, you can be simply emailed. So because everyone's got an email address, and the threat actors send out billions and billions of emails every day, and each of those emails has potentially got a payload in it. So that'll get delivered to your machine, and then depending on the state of your machine, depending on the state of the individual that has got access to that email, it may or may not actually be deployed.
Just about, tell us a bit about Domain Digital and how people can contact you.
Cool. All right. Well, we are a managed service provider, and we actually run a specific or a program of events to work through your environment, and we'll drive infrastructure and behavioral change. We know that when everything is, when we apply best practice standards to an environment, there's much less calls to the help desk. Like, we'll never make all of the help desk calls go away, but we certainly know that when everything is configured in the manner that it should be, the number of calls that you get is significantly less. And so that's good for you because you don't have to call us. It's good for us because we don't have to take the calls, and we can spend more time looking through your environment, making sure that we're improving the security and educating staff, rather than just taking taking a help desk call to fix something that should never have been broken in the first place.
Yeah.
And we spoke on this before. You've got people, process, and technology are the three components of systems and security. And yes, you can you can have great people and you can buy great technology, but process is incredibly important, and that needs to be developed over time. So it's not quite so simple to get good and effective process in place to ensure that your great people and your great technology remain configured and operating in the manner that they should be. So how do we help? I love business, and I love to educate. So our entire philosophy is around stability, security, and efficiency. And this is pretty much the order that we need to roll into an environment. If things are not working properly, we need to make it stable. If the security is not quite what it needs to be, then there's a program of events to roll out the technologies and process and configuration to improve security. And then you start to look at efficiency. How do you do stuff better with less resources? And staff and management issues are often where we're called in. We can help improve these environments, making people's lives a lot easier. And so again, going back to the people, process, and technology, often when we're pulled into a new environment, like everyone's got a tech provider somewhere along the line, and often they'll have great people, and often they'll have great technologies. Like we don't necessarily have to pull everything out and start again, but process failures are systemic, and we see that time and time again. Business conversations, stripping out the tech, like a lot of people's eyes glaze over when you're talking about technologies, but if you're having a conversation around business, people are happy to chat about that all day. And we act as the bridge. So understanding business, what are your challenges? How do we fix that from a tech perspective, and make sure that your efficiency are improved along the way. We sort of fit with organisations that are up to 150 seats, and we roll through the security, stability, and efficiency plans to improve the environment. Ultimately, it takes time. It's a journey, but we know that when people pop out on the other side, they'll be in a significantly better place than when they were when they started. And that's pretty much it. So yeah, you can get hold of us, sales@domaindigital.com.au, or the office number is 08 9441 6300.
Thank you very much for that. We've gone a little bit over the hour, but there's a lot of information there. We got some good questions. I know from past experience there's a lot more detail that could be gone into as well. But thank you, Charlie. It's always a pleasure to have you on these webinars, and thank you for coming and visiting my group recently. We had a really good session with them as well. So again, domaindigital.com.au is the website, and the phone number is 0894416300, and talk to Charlie. It's interesting with small business, so many small businesses don't think it's going to happen to them, but there's so many horror stories around of identity theft and all sorts of things. Just to finish off, to make people aware that this thing can happen to a small business. A client of mine who's in my mentoring group, There's a bookkeeper, got a bookkeeping business, and there's a tax agent. She lodged a tax return for a small business only to get an error message, which when she investigated it, the tax office said, no, that business has already submitted their tax return and had a refund because somebody had completely falsified the tax returns and stolen the person and the business's identity. And I've recently received a couple of emails purporting to be coming from MyGov, wanting me to fill in a form. And I don't know if you've seen that one yet, Charlie, but it appears to be doing the rounds. MyGov do not send you emails, but it looks very convincing.
Back in the old days, it was so obvious that something was not right, misspelled, inappropriate punctuation and capitalization. Now, logos are on point. The language and the wording is absolutely spot on. So sometimes the only way to tell that there's an issue is hovering your mouse over the top of links and seeing where it's actually going. And with the proliferation of and the ease to register new domains, even that can be tricky as well, because sometimes our eyes will play tricks on us, and you'll think that it says one thing and it actually says another. So it's very, very easy to be tricked.
Well, that's more good advice. All right, let's leave it there. And thanks again, Charlie. Thank you, everybody, for turning up, who turned up live, and those that are on the replay and the podcast. Hope you enjoy it. Contact us if you have any questions. So thanks, Charlie. And I hope by now that you are convinced that you need to take action to make sure you're protecting your business and yourself from scammer attacks and cyber attacks. As recent as this morning's ABC News, there were reports by the Northern Territory Police of 2 building companies who in the last couple of months had paid out over $500,000 each, that's over $1 million in total, to fraudulent bank accounts run by scammers. And not only that, this year so far, the ACCC, ScamWatch, have received 166,000 reports of scams that have cost people money. So to finish up, thank you for listening to this podcast. A question that often comes up on this topic is, can I get insurance to cover me if I get a cyber attack or get scammed? The answer is yes, but it comes with lots of conditions. And a Business Owners Taking Action group member who's an insurance broker, Jody Williams, did a video with me, which you can find, where she talks about all the ins and outs of getting insurance against these kind of things. So look out for that. And remember, you can always contact me through my website, johndenton.com.au, and I'll answer any questions that you may have. And you can find more videos and podcasts on that site. Until the next episode, thank you for listening, and be a business owner taking action.